My name's Sheena Lindholm and I'm a mayoral candidate at the next local government elections. I'm so local, I was born on the hospital on the hill in Nanango, and I've lived in the South Burnett region ever since. In 2007, I was offered a traineeship with Nanango Shire Council, and it opened my eyes to the potential that local government had for change. From then, I set out to work behind the scenes to find out what was going on in council, so that one day when I had the opportunity to make that change, I knew the background, I knew how it worked, and I could implement the best change possible from the people's perspective. It comes down to me wanting to stand up for my community. I've been working for the past 3 years in the office of the mayor, and I've had really good insight into what the mayor's role is, and also what the gaps are in our community and what needs to be fixed into the future. I'm passionate about what our area is going to look like in the next 20 years' time, and I hope to be there to make sure that we're getting the outcomes that we need. I have two children, they'll be growing up in our community, and I'd like to see them choose to live, work and play here into the future. I think the Moreton Resources proposal is far too close to Kingaroy. I see agriculture and food security as our greatest potential into the future. With WellCamp on our doorstep, I expect that we can encourage jobs and regional growth in that area, and we don't need a mine that close to Kingaroy to do so. Furthermore, I know that in 2012, Council conducted its largest survey ever. Overwhelmingly from the people, we heard that our community moved here and wanted to stay on and live here because we had a rural lifestyle. We need to preserve that, and we need to make sure that right through for the next 20 years, we can see that happen. From my point of view, what I really want to see is that each town has its own unique feature. So I want to make sure that in each of our regional areas, we're looking for something that's going to build them up to what they need to be. So if I look at Blackbutt, it's the gateway to the region. It has the rail trail. We're starting to boom. It has a $3 million development going in it right now. This is what's going to make people buy. But even more so, it's only 2.5 hours from Brisbane. This is where people are going to buy and travel to and from Brisbane every day for work. When I look over at Wondai, I look at the aged population. So how can we possibly help them and harness that? Does that mean we use our council land and encourage village developers that come in and make sure that for retired people they have a safe place to stay? When I look at Mergen, do we need to put a Coles in place so that there's 2 big shopping districts either side? But then Mergen's also got the dam, and it's got the wineries, and it's got everything that you could possibly want from a tourism and an agricultural industry point of view. So how do we build on those things? What kind of developers do we want to come into play? Council have a role in making sure that that occurs, and talking to people and cutting the red tape, and here, we can give you land for $1 if you can give better value to us than what we can do on our own. So there are 2 industries that I think could be boosted right away. One of them is agriculture. We have WellCamp Airport on our doorstep right now, and if we can make the proper linkages between us and that airport, we could be directly exporting to China tomorrow. The other industry I see is tourism. We have some of the most magical places in Australia, and they're all within an hour from each other. We have 2 unique dams, we have the Bunya Mountains, we have wineries. I know for a fact that there are people out there who I've come across in my day-to-day job who've said, we want you in our catchment area because you give us something to do. So what we need to do is we need to be harnessing that and bringing people out from Brisbane, out from the Sunshine Coast, out from the Gold Coast into the South Burnett. And we can also do that tomorrow and boost that right away. They're the 2 places and the 2 industries where I think we can make direct change and give a short-term economic impact while we're working on something long-term. We have rural lifestyle, open spaces, starry skies. We have watercourses. These are the things that some people across the world have never seen before, and we take for granted. But I know when we had some Chinese investors come over a couple of years ago, and the first thing they asked us is, do we see stars in the sky? That stuff to us is what we want to preserve, and that stuff is what we want to be showcasing the world. There aren't too many negatives here in the South Burnett, but one thing that's inhibiting us into the future is our digital connectivity. I want to see us moving businesses from Brisbane out to the South Burnett. Those little home businesses who who can be anywhere and just look for transport to get their stuff off eBay to overseas, but they're looking for a rural lifestyle for their family. If we can get digital connectivity set, I think we're onto something, and then we can connect to everybody else. If there's something I want to see, it's communication on roads. And whilst that's a state government owned road, and I understand that they probably did the maintenance work because it was just before Christmas, one of their busiest times in tourism. But really we need to be open about what's a state road and what's a local road. And when are they both being done? And who does the contracts? And how much money are we spending? You're entitled to know, and we're entitled to make sure that we're doing business properly. The second part of that question is, there is no doubt that the Bunya Mountains is one of the jewels in South Burnett's crown. And what I struggle with at the moment is when people get up there as tourists, they stay up there and they don't move around the region. And that's because both roads down either side into the South Burnett region don't connect properly. There's dirt on one side. People can't take hire cars up one of them. So we need to make sure that they're done right so that it can encourage tourism around the region, but also we need to be open about how we're getting those jobs done. I'm a local Nanango lady, so I know about the Nanango Weir, and it's beautiful. When I look at council resources being spent on maintaining that and upgrading it to a tourism standard and making sure that people get out there, I have lots of questions about that, because I wouldn't like to put up a tourist facility that we don't want people going out there because it's not being looked after. I also understand that there's quite a few people that live out there and who have concerns about making sure that the people who are out there for the right reasons. So I wouldn't want to put anything in place unless we've considered that all properly. The reality is, the South East Queensland population don't know we even exist at the moment. What we need to be doing is putting ourselves out there, building our brand online, and making sure that any organisation that we're part of is showcasing the South Burnett for what it is. We have some really beautiful qualities. It's why we live here. All we need to do is showcase them to the rest of Queensland, to the rest of Australia, and to the rest of the world. If we can do that properly, we can get people here. Once they're here, we need to make sure that we're maintaining the roadsides, getting back to basics, the toilets are clean, that our streets look clean so that people want to go into our businesses and spend as much money as they can and take their memories back with them so they can tell everybody else. When I talk about the South Burnett to people, I tell them about our 2 dams. I tell them about our rail trail, the Bunya Mountains, our museum network, all of the wineries that we have to discover. These are all wonderful experiences that are right on our doorstep that people love to enjoy and hear about. These are also the things that help make people's decisions on whether they're going to live and invest here. So we need to make sure that we're telling our story. Together, it is our responsibility to keep the crime rates down. Local government have responsibility for infrastructure and making sure that it's provided adequately for our state services to be able to do the best job they can do in keeping our crime down. We must be communicating all the time about what infrastructure we've got now and what we're planning on building in the future so that we can minimise this well and truly for our next generation. There is no doubt that this is a social issue Australia-wide. And we need to make sure as a community that we're on a united front. So not only are we supporting all of the state and federal government services, but we're supporting those homegrown community groups who are making a difference on the ground every day. I am so glad to see that we are now talking about domestic violence, a problem that has been in Australia for a very long time. We need to make sure as a community that we're continuing to say no, it is not acceptable, and making sure that we have support services that educate people about how it occurs, and support services that support people who are currently going through the issue. And even further forward, we need to make sure that those people who are living in our community and trying to survive day to day, or trying to get out of a situation so that they can do better for their family and for our future, that we're looking after them, helping them feel safe, and seeing the issue come to a point where we don't have to talk about it anymore because it's actually gone. We're in this unique situation where we actually have a regional private hospital. And I know that when people make decisions, one of those major 5 factors in moving their family from one community to another is health. When I'm looking at the private hospital, what I'm considering is what does our community need now, and what does our community need into the future? And from your perspective, how much do you have to pay for that? What I'd like to see is I'd like to see it retained, because what we need to be building together is a strong economy that's filled with families who want to live, work and play here. There is no doubt that our region needs a new public hospital, and I will be very loudly advocating on behalf of our people to make sure that that's heard in every single tier of government who's making a decision right now and into the future. We can't afford not to have one. From council point of view, we can lend support in that area and make sure that our hospitals are well connected to our community so that it's ease of transition between where our community is, how we get to the hospital and how patients get home. There is no doubt that it's the Mayor's role to make sure that we're advocating to make sure that we've got as many health professionals to have access to as possible. When we're saying loudly that we need a public hospital, we're also going to be saying loudly, we need more health professionals. We have the population to support it, and you need to be supporting regional Queensland. Mental health is a really important part of our community. And what I'm really grateful to see at the moment is we have some great community groups who are doing good things for the people who need it most. From a local government level, we need to be making sure that we're connecting those people, connecting those in need to our support services, and we need to be advocating for better mental health. The issue here isn't about us drinking a glass of wine at one of our wineries. The issue is binge and excessive drinking. And we as a community need to make sure that we're standing up and saying, no, we don't support this. And from a local government level, just like any other cultural issue, we need to be making sure that we're connecting people to the support groups that they need to be part of. Our community has some really great support groups for this issue, but what we need is them to be joined in one place so that when somebody needs access to these groups, we have the answers so we can get them help quickly. There is no doubt that Australia has been dealing with this problem for generations. And what I'm really glad to see is that right now we're actually talking about it. And in our community, we're already saying no, domestic violence is not acceptable. What I'd like to see from a local government perspective is making sure that our community is connected, that we have the right services in place, but even more so, that we're looking after the people who are going through it. It's about making sure that council's spending the money within our means. I understand that there has to be some processes, just like when we're buying our own house, that we need to borrow for the long-term benefit of our community. But there are also times where we need to be analysing exactly what we've got and ask the question, do we really need it? Is there someone else serving that purpose at the moment? Or is there another model that we can put in place that can serve us economically? How we balance the budget is by asking these questions to each line of the budget to make sure that what council has is what council requires, but more importantly, it's what the community needs right now. One of the reasons I'm standing for mayor is because I've noticed in the past that council don't take seriously their ability to note down what their intentions are with their budget through the organisational structure. I believe that the counting books of council should be open for public scrutiny. And this is because council, whilst we have a very effective staff, we also need some extra input from our community. And I don't mind it when people are asking us questions because it keeps us in check. I absolutely stand for transparency. And what I want to be making sure is that when council has business that's being conducted that is in your interest, that you have the ability to access that and to be able to improve our decision making into the future. After all, that's what communicating to the community is about. There are processes that we need to be protecting. Things like tender processes are things I would not like to see be publicly available. However, certainly the process should be able to be scrutinised, so we should be transparent in the process to make sure that we're making the best decisions possible. Council does not communicate in any way that we can understand at the moment. And if there's something that we're all truly frustrated about, it's in the ability to access the information that's already there. What I can tell you is that this is one of my key points, and I'll be fighting to make sure that if you have a question, that we have the ability to be able to give you a direct answer. Council absolutely need to be making sure that we're spending money appropriately. And there's a couple of ways that we can be doing this, even when we're supporting our businesses locally. What I really want to be making sure though, is that we've got the right processes in place so that when our officers are delegated to be making those purchases, that we've got strict conditions, and we've also got reason to, if work hasn't been conducted properly, pull people back into line so it's not at the cost of the ratepayer. The road levy brings us in nearly $3.2 million every year so that we can maintain roads. The question I'd like to ask is, without that $3.2 million, how can we conduct any more business on roads where the money needs to be spent? What I'd like to see though, is I'd like you to have the capability to be able to find your road on that maintenance schedule. And what else I'd like to see is that at the start of the year, we have an entire list of where council will be, and we have a plan to make sure that the roads that we're putting in place are going to last us into the future. I agree that our rural ratepayers don't get nearly as much value from council as what they used to, and that we need to be making sure that we're all happy with the level of service that council is giving. I also recognise that council needs to look after our community hub as well. But what we can do is we can change the ways of some of the things and the services that we deliver in town so that our rural ratepayers can get more value out of our service. So if that means sacrificing seasonal flowers for a year just so that you can get your roadside slashed, that's something that I'm interested in and would like to see delivered. One of the most asked about questions from our residents is, when will our road be fixed to the standard that we expect it to? And I don't have an answer to that question for you because I'm not an engineer. But what I will be doing for you is asking the questions to make sure that when a road's put down, we're doing it at the best standard possible for the best result for you, so that we're not having to come out within a short period of time. If we have a major industry come to the South Burnett, there is no doubt that this problem needs to be looked at right away. However, what I'm focused on fixing now is making sure that our ageing population has access to car parks in front of our shops. And we can do that by a number of ways. It may not necessarily mean that we put in extra car parks in the CBD main area. It might mean that we sign it accordingly so that those car parks are allocated for our pensioners, for example. But also what we need to be looking at is building car parks in behind our town network and making sure that they're connected to our business district so that people have the ability to shop and move easily between the areas. Roads are important to all of us, and I expect that your council will be working on that from day one to make sure that we're getting the best out of our roads with the resources that we have. We know we don't have an unlimited budget, but what we do like to see with our budget, that it's spent in the best way possible. And I want to make sure that maintenance is done accordingly. That's not just rolling a grader down your road. That's making sure that the sides of your road are slashed so that when water falls on our infrastructure, it has the ability to run off and not cause any more damage than what has been caused in the past. The reality is that it doesn't matter how much money we have in that bucket, it's never going to be enough. But council gets them from a number of funding sources, and we need to be making sure that we're advocating for every dollar possible. Also, we need to be making sure that the money we're spending is getting value for what we're putting into our road network. And if there are jobs that aren't being done properly, we need to be also calling on accountability, because that's not something the ratepayers should be funding. I don't have access to that information, and neither do you. And I see that as a problem because we need to be open and transparent where council's spending their budget. There are definitely different allocations from where we're maintaining the roads, to where we're investing into road infrastructure, to where we're spending it on council vehicles being able to inspect our network. What we need to be making sure is that we're tightening the reins where possible, we're getting the best work from all of our staff, and that we're maintaining the road to your house in the best way possible. I don't have access to this information at this time. However, I believe that this information should be accessible. Again, there is no clear answer to this, and we need to be asking for open transparency in council books. I'd like to make sure that we change the way we assess our roads, because what we're doing at the moment isn't working. Yes, they need to be meeting the Australian standards, but we also need to find another analysis tool that makes sure that we're getting to the roads that you need us to do. I'd like to make sure that we're looking at them politically, economically, socially. Is there any technology that can assist us? Legally, what are we required to do? And how can we do this best economically? Education is really important to the South Burnett's future. And the reason is because when people are looking for a place to live, one of their top 5 things is education. And if we don't have that available, then we'll see people moving elsewhere. And at this point in time, we can't afford that. So I'm really pleased to see that a university such as CQU is interested in investing in our area, and I'd like to see that expand into the future. Telecommunications has a huge role in this, but I'd like to see more than that. I'd still like to make sure that we have a base here where there can be person-to-person contact, because I know that that's really important in education too. But for the meantime, in the short term, I'd like to make sure we're at least linked to any university in Australia so that our children can stay and be educated right here in the South Burnett. Council need to be innovative in its business, and we need to be looking at areas like solar panels and asking for business cases so we can see the most effective way moving forward in our business. You're right, we have lots of roof spaces that we could possibly look at and see if they're worth utilising, but we need to at least be looking into this. Council have parcels of land that we can be using for industrial development to make sure that we're building the economy for our towns and also to make sure that we've got jobs for our families. We also need to be making sure in this that we're looking after our farmland because that's where our future is. So if there's anything we can do to help improve the quality of land and protect it for the future, then we're open to ideas and we'll be listening to make sure we're looking after our community. The renewable energy sector is really new, and it's especially new to our region. Of course there are things that we could be doing, and really what I'd just like to do is just by opening the door a little and looking at what could possibly be done. I believe that here in Australia we're all equal, and we need to make sure that the rules that we're governed by reflect that appropriately. My thoughts on any laws that are in place is that they should truly reflect what we're putting in place for our people. And if they're out of date, then we need to be looking at them and making sure that they reflect our current society. And that's all of us standing as equals. I think it's important that we accurately represent our history. What I'm concerned about though, is that some of that history is already lost, and we need to be cutting the red tape so we can capture it as quickly as possible and be teaching it properly. We need to see communication improved. And when I say that, that's not just us walking out, asking some questions about what we want to hear. It's about actually going into our communities, sitting down next to each other on the ground and having real conversations about how we can move forward together and where the links are missing. We have some fantastic history that if we can join it together, we've actually got something to celebrate together. And even more importantly, people will appreciate that for the first instance. And if we can pilot that and capture that and move forward, can you believe how unique our community could possibly be? Absolutely. Council needs to be utilising technology where possible. It's our future. And we can be putting in small measures in place right now that's going to help you with what you need. But also, what I expect from Council is that looking into the future, we're finding solutions that are going to be long-term. So that might be you being able to access your rate notice online and the ability to pay with your credit card. That also might be you taking a picture of that pothole in the road and sending it directly to a staff member so that we can get it on record quickly and give you a corrective action. That's how I'd like to see Council utilise more technology. There is no doubt that Council could streamline some of its operation, and how we can do that is by using technology. Not is that just an instance where we could be using it at our customer service area, or we could be using a touch screen at the front window when we're actually closed the doors for the afternoon. But we can be using that when someone's having a road inspection and we're taking a photo of what's occurred and we're sending it back to the office right away so that we can get back to you in a shorter time frame. Even more so, from our communication point of view, we should be communicating to the world the great things that we do and the great things that we have. And the way we can do that is just on a website, and we haven't even got that yet. So when I look at technology, we need to be looking at basics, but we also need to be looking into the future to see what's the next innovation. Is that on the rail trail and being able to drive along and be GPS located, and also listening to the history at the same time? There's lots of answers out there. It's in technology. I'm passionate about it. And you know what? I hope to have the conversation with you soon. Absolutely, and it's a big passion area of mine. We need to make sure that we're connected. Not that we're just connected to each other, but we're connected in our regions, we're connected to Brisbane, and we're connected to the world. That's where our future is. Some places don't even have internet connections, but some places really do. And I look at Proston, for example, where I had 5 bars of service over the weekend. And I look at that and think we can bring home-based businesses out from Brisbane tomorrow. And because they want the rural lifestyle, they'd be prepared to come out just because we have digital connectivity. We need to be making sure that we have this vital link so that we can move forward. I think it's still impossible in our society today to see us going paperless. However, I think we need to be working extremely hard to get to that point so that we're saving money, making cost measures, but also so that we're moving forward and being forced to use the technology that we hope to be putting in place. I'm not affiliated with any party because I don't believe that there's any place for it in local government. It's important that when we're representing you, we're representing your values, not one of a party. Do you want to know why I stood up for this job? It was because links have been missing between all of our stakeholders, between our levels of government, between our community, internally in council, externally from council. And if there's something that you need your leader to do, it's to connect everyone together so that when we're delivering a project, we're on the same page and we're moving in the same direction and we're going to get the best outcome that we possibly can. No, the first thing we need to be working on is making sure that our council processes are working efficiently and that our business is running to the standard that you need it to be at. Absolutely, because I wouldn't be standing if I didn't think so. But we all know that standing for council isn't about the money. It's making sure that we're representing what the community needs well and truly into the future. I believe in being open and transparent, and if that means opening up our books so that we can all understand what's going on behind the scenes of council, I think that's a good thing that we share that information. I don't believe that there's any corrupt action currently occurring or into the future, because we have laws now that keep us in check and making sure that we've got measures in place so that this doesn't actually occur. What's beautiful about Australia is that we actually have laws against racism, and that's a really good place to start. But we know that we're probably not quite there yet in accepting cultures from across the world to be living and being part of our community. So what I'd like to offer is for us to go on this journey together to make sure that when someone moves here, that they feel like they're in a safe and secure place and that they're as equal as you and I to be living here in the South Burnett. Workplace health and safety is everybody's responsibility. And in our community spaces and venues, it's council's responsibility to make sure that they're safe for you to use. But what's more important is that if there is a problem arising, that you're able to report back to us so that we can prioritise it effectively. We all have a responsibility in workplace health and safety. It's about keeping each other safe. But what I'd like to see is council lead the cause so that when you look to someone who you can ask some questions, we'd be happy to help you out in understanding what our responsibilities are in keeping our customers and our community safe.